Hi, welcome back. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you are staying safe and healthy out there. Today, I wanted to deliver on something that I mentioned before, which is what happens when the narcissist dies. And this is a really tough subject, and it's hard for me because I've had this happen during the holiday season. And for years, I've had to wrestle with those emotions that go along with that. I'm sure that you've heard of or are aware of the 5 stages of grief. You've got denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. And you may go through each of those in order, or you may bounce around among all 5. And different ones may pop up at different times in your life, depending on what's going on and your temperament and what you're going through. So, anyway, when the narcissist dies, I thought of a handful of things that come up emotionally when the narcissist dies. I told you about the phone conversation, the last call, the when it's the narcissist's last call. In that video, I talked about my last conversation ever with my dad. And I was pregnant at the time. At the end of the conversation, after he had cried and blamed everybody and gone through this whole rant about his life and what was wrong and all this stuff and how it was everybody else's fault, that I had to pee and I had to get off the phone. And I resisted the temptation to put him in his place, like, look, you're the reason for all the things that you just mentioned. It's you're the common denominator. But I didn't do it. I held my tongue because he was already depressed. He was already by himself, lonely, alone, on the outs with family, and had already trashed a bunch of relationships, ruined a lot of opportunities for himself, and he was already in his feelings. So I didn't want to rub salt in it, didn't want to do that. Something inside of me told me, don't do it. Just don't. And I will tell you, as tempting as it was, I'm so grateful knowing now how things unfolded. I'm grateful that I did not, because I would have felt even worse and it would have been even more devastating if I had gone forward and read him the Riot Act. So basically, I went back home with my mom and my husband after spending the holidays in Los Angeles. And when we got back, I went back to work. And at the time, I was working a sales job. And I went to go take a lunch break during my sales job. And like I said, I was 3 months pregnant with my daughter. And I was on my way back to the sales office after lunch for a meeting. And my younger brother called me. And I literally was almost back to the office, and he basically called and he's like, Dad passed away. And I just, I cannot describe how shocking that was. I mean, I didn't see it coming. I wasn't expecting it. And it just, anyway, it was a lot. And I did go to my meeting, but I fell apart. And one of my friends who had actually gotten me the job, he drove ahead of me, and I followed him all the way to my house because he wanted to make sure that I got back home safely to my mom and my husband, having gotten this news. And so he, I literally, I lost it in the car on the way home, and I almost actually rear-ended my friend. But I lost it on the way home. And it just, I mean, I was already hormonal and already had a lot going on with the pregnancy, and just a flood of emotions kicked in, and it's just, I can't even describe it. I mean, it's been some years now, but it was just unbelievable. I think I called my best friend on the way home, and I talked to her for a little bit. I let her know, and But other than that, I just did a lot of crying and a lot of screaming in the car on the way back to my house. Some of the things that may come up for you when the narcissist dies are: one, shock. You won't see it coming a lot of times, unless they're terminally ill or that type of thing. You won't see it coming, and it's shocking. You go from an extreme of maybe going no contact with the narcissist to just to this intense level of emotion and then involvement in their affairs because they're no longer here. And that can be overwhelming, but it's shocking. My dad was working out in a gym and he went into cardiac arrest. And unfortunately, when someone realized that there was something wrong with him and that he wasn't just resting in between sets, they had him rushed to the hospital, and I think they brought him back for a minute and then he flatlined. But kind of similar to what happened with Whitney Houston and Michael Jackson, just went into cardiac arrest. And I don't know if you know, but when you go into cardiac arrest, there's like a small window of time for you to be brought back. And if that window is exceeded or anything like that, you start to die gradually. And he did not make it. And he knew his way around the gym. And, we knew immediately that there was no issue there. But, a lot of years of really hard living and substance abuse, maybe coupled with some, predispositions, and there you go. But 19 years of substance abuse, that will catch up to you. So I'm not under any illusions about genetics or anything like that, when the reality is that, he chose to abuse substances for 19 years. And you can be as strong as you want to be and lift as much as you want. You can bench as much as you want to, but if you abuse substances for a period of years, it's going to catch up with you. The other thing is anger. A lot of times when you're dealing with a narcissistic individual, you might feel like there's unfinished business. You may have unresolved conflict, or just feel like, you've gone from having to deal with this person who's maybe harassed you or stalked you or argued with you or gaslit you, to like they're just gone. And it's like, no, like there's unfinished business, unresolved feelings, things that weren't said, and maybe even changes that weren't made. And that can be really frustrating when you're left with that. Also, their destructive habits, bad habits, substance abuse, and conflicts with people. That can be really frustrating, to have to be the one left kind of holding the bag with that. Also, there's time and money that have been wasted. And in addition to that, maybe people who are uninformed about narcissism and narcissistic abuse, like maybe a codependent family member, that type of thing, can make excuses for the narcissist. Like, well, heart disease ran in the family. Well, he just, he did the best he could, and that type of thing. You might hear those kinds of things, and that can be frustrating to listen to when you're like, no, it was the substances. No, 19 years of smoke and crackle, that'll cut your life short, no matter who you are. Also, another thing that might come up is sadness. Maybe you feel like you missed out, like on the kind of relationship that you would have liked to have had with the narcissist. And that can be a really sad thing. Or you see the decline of the narcissist and think, gosh, you were so smart, talented, funny, whatever the case may be. Or you had so much potential and you wasted it. Or I would have helped you to get here if you had only let me in or been humble or whatever. And it can be sad to think about those things, reflect on those things in the aftermath of the narcissist's death. Also, your needs from the narcissist may go unmet, especially if it's a narcissistic parent, that parent that you never had. One of a girl's really important primary relationships is with her dad. And to not have that is really sad and disappointing and depressing. Like, that's never going to happen. You may, in watching the narcissist decline, see that, gosh, this person was their own worst enemy. If they had only gotten out of their own way, they might still be here. And that can be sad too. Also, you might feel a sense of relief. And this is something that can make you feel guilty, because on the surface, it sounds so wrong, but you may feel a sense of relief. If you've been hoovered, stalked, harassed, cursed out, degraded, devalued, it may be a relief to not have to listen to that anymore, to not have to deal with that anymore. If the narcissist went quickly, you may see that as a relief. Like, gosh, thank goodness, because it was fast. They probably didn't even feel it. I felt that way and thought that way about my dad. And I know in talking to some of my family members, like my mom and everything, we've talked about the fact that, at least he died doing something that he loved, as opposed to all the other ways that he could have died, given the fact that given the way that he was living his life, especially towards the end. If you've been future faked by the narcissist, you don't have to deal with disappointment anymore, which can be a relief. You can actually get on with your life and maybe even manifest some of the things that the narcissist future faked you on. If you maybe thought more highly of the narcissist than you really should have, or needed to, you don't have to worry anymore about thinking those kinds of thoughts, or putting that type of a person on a pedestal anymore. The other thing that may come up for you is guilt. Feeling like, oh my gosh, I didn't do enough, or if only I had done this, or if we could have just, like, say in the case of my dad, if we could have just gotten him here, with us, we could have put him in a really nice rehab facility and gotten him better and really helped him to do the deep work to get better. You may feel guilty for distancing yourself from the narcissist and then leveling up in your life, and while they're stuck and, broke, homeless, still kind of ruminating over the same type of stuff, or still up to their same old habits, their same behaviors, the same cycle of abuse with either you or others, and not changing, not evolving, not growing or maturing. Also, you may feel guilty for calling out the narcissist BS after they've gone. And I know that I've had to do this, just even to correct family members, like, no, that's not how that went down. It's this. Or, you know what? Like, say in the example of my dad's death, like, no, I don't think that I don't think hereditary heart disease was really the issue. I think that the issue was substance abuse and the effect on the heart from that. So let's keep it real. Let's call it what it is, and let's acknowledge it 100%. Finally, and this hopefully will encourage you, is that you may feel a sense of resolve. And this was a really big breakthrough for me, because what I realized after a while, I think I was having a conversation with someone, or I might have even been in a therapy session or in a grief support group. And I finally came to the realization that I am not my dad. And similarly, I want to encourage you, you are not the narcissist. You are not the narcissist that you were dealing with, whether it was your parent or whoever. You are not them. And you do not need to take on the burden of their character weaknesses, their trauma, their pain, their undealt with issues, their unwillingness to change. That is not your fault, and it's not your problem. And that is not who you are. Even as someone who has been abused by a narcissist, that is not your identity. It does not have to define you. It can define you if you let it, but it doesn't have to define you. A lot of times we focus on the narcissist did this, the narcissist did that, the narcissist is this or that, they're annoying, they're being a pain in the butt, they're harassing me, they're stalking me, they're a loser, they're bothering me, they, took my money, they wasted my time. But we oftentimes don't think about the fact that, just like a lot of things in life, narcissists have an expiration date. And depending on how they're living their life, it may come sooner than later. And that there will be a day when you will not hear from them ever again. Have you had a narcissist in your life pass away? How did you respond? How did you feel about it? Comment below. I'd love to hear your story. You're not alone, and you're not crazy. Know who you're dealing with. Know who you are. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.